Hello everyone. Today we are going to cover just a few concepts, but we're going to do it while modeling a toaster, so that it's probably going to be a little bit difficult to keep ourselves to our time limit of 15 minutes or less, but we'll do our best. Today we're going to cover the mirror modifier, loop cut and slide. We're going to talk about refining a subdivision surface modifier with loop cuts, and then we'll use a couple of different shaders or materials, but we're going to talk about the metallic property of the principled BSDF shader. So to start off, I've just got a default cube here. I'm going to tap 5 on my number pad to go into an orthographic viewport because I prefer to model from an orthographic view. And I'm going to tab into edit mode, and immediately I'm going to cut this cube in half because the object that we're going to make today is symmetrical across the x-axis. So basically I'm just going to delete half of the object across that axis and save myself some work. So I'm going to do a loop cut. That's Control R. That loads my cursor with a slide operation, which I don't want because in this instance I want my loop cut to be precisely in the center of my object. So I'm going to opt out of this portion of the command by pressing escape. And now I have a slice down the middle of my object. So from here I can go to vertex select mode, which is the keyboard shortcut for that is just 1, not on the number pad, but over above the QWERTY keys. So I'll hold down shift and select multiple vertices here, and I'm going to delete this left side of my object. So tap delete and click on vertices. It's gone. You can see it's subdivided exactly down the center. So if I come over here to my modifier stack now, I can add a mirror modifier. You can see that its default axis is X, so it's already doing its job. I'm also going to check this box for clipping, because what that does is that makes it so that my center vertices that are precisely on the center line, are not allowed to move across the axis of the mirror. So if I tap GX and try to move these in the X-axis, you'll see they don't move. They kind of stay glued together so that the thing acts like one object. I can move them in Y, I can move them in Z, but I can't move them across that mirror line. So that's a handy tool to use. There are instances where you'll need to turn it off or want to turn it off, especially if you accidentally push a vertex into that center and need to pull it back out. You'll have to uncheck that. But for now we're going to use it. Okay, now we have to kind of think about the topology of our object here. I'm going to be using a subdivision surface modifier, which let's look at these 3 vertices here. So what a subdivision surface modifier does is it basically kind of starts drawing an arc in a sense. This is not precisely what it does, but visually it ends up making something of a curve where currently I have a corner. And so this object is so low poly, so simple, that if I were to put a subdivision surface modifier on it right now, it would really make kind of a useless object. It's just too rounded. You know, that's not rounding my edges, it's rounding the whole thing. So let's get rid of that modifier. So I kind of have to think about my topology here, because that rounding of corners can be a bit of a liability, and a toaster seems to be a pretty good use case for running into those eccentricities, those bits of weirdness. So I'm going to use my loop cut tool to actually kind of cut out the area where I want my toaster slots to be. So Control R, and I'm gonna, if I want a loop cut in a certain direction, I just have to mouse over an edge that is perpendicular to that direction. So I'm making the toast slots, so we'll cut that direction basically along the y-axis, and we'll slide toward the center. I'm going to do another loop cut here for the other side of my toast slot, and then I'm going to cut across the other way to kind of make my toast slots. There we go. Now I'll tap 3 on the number keys above my QWERTY keys, not on the number pad, to go into face select mode. So I can select this face. I'm going to tap Z and swipe left to go into a wireframe view, and I'm going to just tap E to extrude downward. And the reason I want a wireframe view is I don't want to accidentally go too far and end up doing that thing where like the pockets hang out from underneath the jean shorts or something. So I'm just going to put my toast slots down in here to a realistic depth, and I want to be able to see them. So that's probably good right there. Tap Z and swipe right. It takes me back to my flat shaded view. Okay, and I'm also going to scale this whole thing in the y-axis because this is really too boxy for a toaster. So S, Y, and pull it out there. And that looks like a little more of a realistic proportion for a toaster. So I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, and I also need a slot down the front of the toaster. So I'm going to kind of make some loop cuts here and kind of make an area there where I can put a slot in. And that's going to be my slot right there, right down the middle. Okay, now I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier, and we'll see how it treats this thing. I know it's going to look awful, so let's brace ourselves for that. And actually that's not as bad as I was afraid it would look. So there's my subdivision surface modifier. If I tab into edit mode, then I can of course see the actual locations of my edges. So I'm going to click this little triangle here to turn on the edit cage, or rather to adjust the edit cage to my modifier result. So you can see here basically where the modifier puts the edges, and you can kind of see that the bread slots got pretty messed up. So what I need to do here is provide more loop cuts. Basically I need to shorten the corner length that the subdivision surface modifier is trying to curve. So let's start off with the inside of these toast slots. So I'm going to hit Control R, and I'm going to mouse over this edge so I know I'm cutting inside the toaster slot, not the outside of the toaster. I'm going to click there and then slide this up, and you can see that the ledge, those corners, are getting a little sharper. Now I'm not going to slide them all the way up because I don't want to put one edge exactly on top of another one, but I'm going to get them close. If I turn off my subdivision surface modifier, you can see how close those edges actually are. But that makes for a sharper corner. We're not out of the woods yet, so we're going to do it on the bottom of the toast slot as well. You can see it stopped there, so I'm going to back it off just a little and click to commit. Okay, so now I need to deal with this attempt at curving a corner. So I'm going to cut across the middle and come toward the edge here. Again, I'm going to bump into the edge and then back off just a little. There we go. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Bump into the edge, back off just a little, and then I'm going to do it same thing outside of the toast slots. So kind of come over here to the edge, back off a little, Control R, bump, and back off. Okay, and that's getting closer. Now I need to do the same thing to the y-axis edges of the slots. So bump in, back out, bump and back. Okay, and that's looking a little better for those toaster slots. And actually that's starting to look decent for a toaster. So let's cut our front edge here. So I'm going to tap 3 to go into face select mode, and this is going to be my edge, my slot. So I'm going to extrude this back. You can see that that made a mess of things, made a real mess of the front. but that's okay, we can fix that. So I'm going to treat this just like one of the toaster slots. So make a cut going back, loop cut, pull it forward. That's great. Okay, and then I need a slot or a loop cut on top and a loop cut on the bottom. Same thing down here and from the middle as well. Okay, and that's pretty decent toaster topology. So we're still kind of flat shading this thing. You can see every facet of the shape. So I'll go to my object menu and click on Shade Smooth. That's a little better. And let's put some materials on this thing. So if I go to my shading menu, you can see I've got my principled shader loaded up here, and I'm going to take my roughness way down and my metallic value way up. And what that does, the metallic value, is it basically makes it so that there's no diffuse reflection on this thing, which means all of the reflection, all of the light that bounces onto it bounces off in one direction like a mirror. And so that's only specular reflection that it's allowing through, and it also tints the reflection with the base color like metal does. So if I change my base color around to like red or something, then you can see that that reflection gets tinted, which is a realistic behavior for metal. Okay, so we've made that. Let's go back to our layout, and we're going to see if we can find the time to do one more thing here. I'm going to make some heat coils. So Shift A, I'm going to make a new cube, and I'm going to scale it way down. I'm in object mode, so this is a new object. GZ, we'll bring it up. We're just going to use this to I'm going to scale in Y by a factor of about 150. There we go. And we'll shorten that just a little. This is one of the reasons I like to model in an orthographic viewport, so that I can kind of line things up by eyeball. Okay, so we're going to make this into our heat coil. So I've tabbed into edit mode on it, and I'm going to hit Control R to do a loop cut, and then I'm going to scroll upwards so that I have several loop cuts along the whole thing. I'm going to click, that loads a slide command, and I'm going to escape because I don't want to slide. And now I'm going to go into wireframe view and tap C for my circle select brush, and middle click to deselect every other loop here. And then I'm going to tap GZ and just kind of drag those in the Z axis. And that gives me kind of the basis for a coil there. And I can add a subdivision surface modifier to this, and you can see that that really kind of calms it down quite a bit. But I can go back into my edit mode and kind of readjust there. Okay, next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my shading workspace, add a new shader here, and I'm going to get rid of the principled shader and just turn it into an emission shader. And I'm going to change its color to a bright kind of orangey red, so a nice hot red, and give it a little bit more strength. So that's actually a light source now. We'll go back to our layout, and we need to kind of populate this through our model. So GX, let's get it lined up with one side of our toaster, GZ to kind of sink it down in. And then I'll show you one last modifier here, that is the array modifier. So if I click array, then you can see that this is asking, well, how many of these do you want? I've got it set to 2, and it's moving by 1 width of it in X. So we'll put X to 0 and Z to -1. And that looks good. So then I can increase my count. And let's add one more array modifier. Only this one is going to be an X, and we'll just move that over this way until it appears on the other side. Okay, we can collapse both of these, and let's put one more array modifier in there. And again, we'll move it in X. I can hold down Shift to get more precise movements, and there's my toaster. So I hope this was helpful, and I'm not going to bother making the knobs and the lever because we're pretty much out of time, but good luck making your toaster.